one of the quickest and most powerful ways to build a trusting relationship with somebody is to show up with a bit of vulnerability. Now, we all agree that it's probably no good opening every team meeting in tears and my parents never really loved me, I don't know. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about getting at eye level with our teammates. We're talking about saying, you know what, I'm not quite clear about this either. I'm not quite sure about the answer here. What do you think? It's about saying, I'm working on becoming a better listener. What suggestions do you have for me to get better at that? Sharing a meaningful personal goal makes it clear to our teammates that we too are work in progress and always strive to get better. And we do it in 3 acts. The first act is me. The second act is my share, maybe an insecurity, a weakness, something I want to improve, a goal. And the third act, very important, is what am I doing about it? In 3 acts. Brad Smith, the former CEO of the financial technology company Intuit, is a shining example of how to build trust with a bit of vulnerability. Smith volunteered to his board to do a 360. A 360, as some of you probably know. How many of you have done a 360, by the way? Okay, so anonymously surveys everybody around you strengths and weaknesses as a leader. You do it for the first time, it's scary. Why? You get the real deal feedback because it's anonymous. But Smith did not stop there. He volunteered. He wasn't told by the board. He volunteered to do one. And then he shared his 360 report, his strengths, his weaknesses, including his action steps, the third act, not only with his board, but with the entire company. He emailed his 360 report to every single person in the company, down to the last intern. And in the process, built humongous trust across all of Intuit. More importantly, he made it safe for everybody at Intuit to start working on their own stuff. Because you know what? If the CEO admits that he's not perfect and wants to get better, maybe I can do the same thing. This is an important and often misunderstood notion. Trust does not come before vulnerability, but vulnerability is one of the quickest ways to build trust. Sharing our shortcomings, for example, with our team members, while scary, makes us relatable. And by the way, I hate to break it to all of us. Our team members already know that we're not perfect. I'm going to pick on Paul. Why do Paul's team members, why does Kim know that Paul's not perfect? They work with each other every day. My teenage boys know I'm not a perfect dad. Why? They live with me. Everybody admires perfection from a distance, and nobody can relate to it. Let me share with you how building trusting relationships with a bit of vulnerability helped me to achieve strong results at the UN. 2021, I'm deployed to the Middle East, where you do not want to be here because the IDF just crossed yesterday across the ceasefire line. This is between Lebanon and Israel right here. I just finished a long day of patrolling that ceasefire line, which is now not a ceasefire line anymore as of yesterday officially. And I was winding down for the day when a phone call comes in. It's one of my Swiss officers in Syria. He sounds in distress. He goes, Urs, we have a terrible situation. We believe lives are on the line, and nobody's listening. We've tried everything. Can you help us in your role as Swiss National Senior Representative? He downloads some more details. Before we hang up, I tell him the next morning there'll be a leadership meeting, and I'll bring up his concerns then. I hang up. I am not happy. I now have to get the commanding officer in Syria into trouble by asking for a change in leadership. It doesn't help that I'm a low-ranking officer and a newly promoted senior, so I have to work double hard to be taken seriously. Fast forward to the meeting. I lay out in no unclear terms the change that my officers need to see. I'm being very tough on results. I'm being very Swiss, very to the point. To my amazement, my voice is heard at the highest level. A low rank doesn't get me into trouble, and the concerns of my Swiss officers are immediately resolved. After the meeting, I was reflecting on this. What made it possible for me to be heard at highest level despite being a low-ranking officer? I believe the short answer is this. Up to this point, I worked incredibly hard on relationship building, on being tender on people. A few weeks earlier, when I was first promoted to senior, Instead of boasting about my new title, that would not be the humble way, I knew to be effective, I needed to build strong collaborative relationships with key members in the mission. So I pulled out the org chart and identified about 30 people who I knew I needed to build meaningful relationships with. And then I got to work. Over the next 10 days, I spent every hour I was not patrolling the ceasefire line on 30-minute relationship building meetings. During these meetings, I inquired about the other personal background, their concerns, hope for the mission, their expectation of me as a senior. No other business agenda up front. I learned the head of mission loved spending time in my hometown of Zurich in Switzerland together with his family. The chief of staff and I shared a mutual passion for ultra-endurance racing. We shared with a bit of vulnerability, built a foundation for a more trusting relationship. We moved from seniority to connection. There is no question in my mind that the main reason why my voice was heard at the highest level is because I made the effort to build meaningful collaborative relationships with key members in the mission. An important lesson from this story is this: our feedback is much more likely to be heard and acted upon by our team members, and yes, our superiors, if we've built meaningful and collaborative relationships with them. Being tender on people, remember Karl Overbeck, gives me license to be tough on results. But now it should be clear that we don't advocate for relationship building because we want to be nice or liked. No, we build relationships because it drives engagement, it drives commitment, it drives performance. I often hear pushback against this. I don't really have time for this, and we all have too much on our plates. I totally get it. Relationship building is never efficient in the short term. I totally give you that. But it always pays in the long run. You never know who you have to rely on when the famous stuff hits the fan, as it always does. Building bonds with others is a preemptive move.